Madam Chair. Good afternoon, distinguished representatives. I declare open the sixth plenary meeting of the 20th session of the Assembly of State Parties, which is dedicated to Agenda Item 12, Review of the International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute System. And we am here accompanied by the two dedicated representatives to the review mechanism, Ambassador van den Ijssel and Ambassador Kanu, and also the focal points for the court. Now, it is really my pleasure to preside over this meeting, which will consider an issue that it is indeed a priority topic of the Assembly of State Parties, and indeed a crucial exercise to strengthen the Rome Statute system. Since their appointment by the Bureau on 5 February 2021, the members of the review mechanism, together with the working groups, the Assembly mandate holders and the Court, have been working very intensively on the assessment and implementation of the independent expert review recommendations. This Assembly session is an opportune moment for us to take stock of where we stand with the exercise, what has been achieved this year, and what still needs to be done before its conclusion next year. The work of the mechanism is a very complex and meticulous exercise. With input from the Assembly mandate holders, they have successfully submitted their midterm report and final reports this year. The reports serve as a useful guide and update on this very complicated review process and enable it to move forward. The work presented by the review mechanism provides excellent momentum for the strengthening of the ICC and the system as a whole. During its mandate, the review mechanism has periodically updated the Bureau on its progress, and for its part, the Bureau has also participated in this endeavor by implementing the recommendations assigned to it directly. To this effect, the Bureau has proposed a mechanism to ensure an appropriate concerted response against any threat or attack against the Court, its officials, and those cooperating with it, which has the potential to undermine the integrity, effectiveness, or impartiality of the Court. And the Secretariat of the Assembly has prepared a compilation of potential measures to be taken to counter such threats or attacks based on submissions made by state parties and civil society to be added to the mechanism. As indicated by the independent experts, as recognized in the compilation, also preemptively conduct public activities is extremely important to inform relevant stakeholders and the public about the Court and to promote its work. Also, with the upcoming 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute next year, we will have the opportunity to give additional visibility to the Rome Statute system and discuss the strategic vision for the next 10 years, as recommended also by the independent experts. For the commemoration of these auspicious milestones, the Bureau proposes that the Assembly entrust it with the organization of the commemoration process to start in New York at the beginning of July 2023. While the assessment and the conversation, the discussions on the next 10 years will also include a conversation on the review mechanism and the way forward beyond it. While the assessment of some recommendations of the review is still pending, I understand that many more have already been implemented or are in the process of being implemented. This is indeed work in progress, but a great deal of progress has already been made. I would like to thank and commend the review mechanism, but in particular, the state party representatives, Ambassador Kanu and Ambassador van den Eyssel, for having deployed great efforts throughout the process to carry out their mandate in such an effective, detailed, but in particular inclusive and transparent manner. I would also like to commend the Court for its proactive approach to these recommendations. I would also like to recall that it is not only the Court but also the Assembly ourselves that must also play an active role in the process, as some recommendations are indeed addressed to us, the Assembly. Let me conclude by thanking all stakeholders for having participated in this very complex exercise to bring about a stronger ICC. I encourage you to continue doing so in the future until the completion of the entire process. Some of the recommendations still need to be implemented, as I said, and some of the issues are indeed permanent challenges for the system that will always require our attention beyond the review, such as the improvement of the performance of the system, of all components of the system, or, for instance, the work culture. I truly trust that the work already done will better equip us to address effectively the great challenges ahead. I thank you for your attention, and I now invite the state party representatives on the review mechanism, Ambassador Paul van den Eyssel from the Netherlands and Ambassador Kanu from Sierra Leone, to deliver some remarks on this topic. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, for the floor. As usual, Co-Chair Ambassador van der Eyssel and I will jointly deliver the opening remarks. But first, let me thank you, Madam President, for the very kind words directed to the co-chairs, but also the review mechanism as a whole. But also thank you for your very insightful remarks. It is our honor to welcome you and to have you participate in this plenary on the review of the International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute system. We do appreciate the strong support we have always enjoyed from you as President, and indeed all state parties, the court, civil society, and all stakeholders. We recall that you've indicated on a number of occasions how important the review is for the court, state parties, and all stakeholders. And given your long-standing and special link with the court, we know that you do take this issue very much to heart. So thank you so much. State parties representative, as we've indicated in the concept note, would like us to have an interactive discussion today on the progress made and the ideas of stakeholders for the future of the review mechanism. And so, their colleagues, state parties representatives, civil society, and other stakeholders, today's plenary is intended to give the opportunity to all delegations, especially those that have not been able to participate more fully during the year, to contribute to these important discussions. We very much encourage you to take advantage of the presence of the review mechanism, the court focal point, and indeed the President, and raise any questions or comment on the review process. While there's a list of speakers, we encourage you, even if you have not inscribed, to take the floor to make points that you wish to raise on the progress of the review mechanism and its future. We wish to remind the remote participant, as indicated in the concept note, that they have the opportunity to send questions or comments via email to the address indicated in the concept note. We intend also to answer those questions so as to ensure that all participants can contribute to our discussion. Having indicated how we would like to proceed, we'll turn now to our introduction and discussions properly, and then I would invite Ambassador van der Eijsel to proceed with the rest of the remarks from the review mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Without further ado, I will continue. You will recall that at the first plenary meeting of this Assembly, we have introduced our report on the review process submitted pursuant to the resolution of last year. We told you that we've had 10 meetings in 2023 as platform for discussion to focus on the recommendations with a timeline for assessment in the first half and second half of 2022. And this is all based on the comprehensive action plan, which has been our roadmap for the assessment of all the recommendations and still is for the last remaining recommendations. As you know, we have allocated recommendations to different facilitations as platform for discussion, and we do welcome the work on the IER recommendations by the various facilitators, and we are grateful for the fact that they have made progress and in many cases completed the assessment of the recommendations assigned to them. The mechanism itself also assessed most of the recommendations which it allocated to itself as indicated in our reports. I wish also to recall, and I say this often every time I report to the Hague Working Group or the Bureau, but it is important to keep in mind that the review is not a box-ticking exercise, but at the end of the day, we try to achieve what we think is our common goal, to strengthen the court and to make it more efficient and effective. That means that all the work we've done collectively in the last 2 years should result in concrete changes on the ground. Therefore, we intend to organize in 2023 additional discussions or roundtables on the implementation of recommendations that we already have assessed positively and either are at the beginning of implementation or are being implemented, just to keep track of the implementation. A few words on the matrix. The matrix reflects the progress in the assessment of the IER recommendations. We plan to circulate it as soon as possible. It is always a lot of work, and it's getting a bigger piece of work because more and more recommendations are assessed. As you know, the idea is to give you an overview of where we are in the process, both on assessment and implementation. And it is formally an annex, but it will, I think, be circulated in the coming week, I hope. And once more, I would like to highlight that the matrix is a living document which we intend to update regularly until all the recommendations have been assessed, to give you an overview of the state of play. On the resolution, we have circulated a standalone resolution. I think most of you have seen the text. It was circulated in November. We will hold informal consultations on the draft tomorrow. We hope we can have consensus after a short discussion. And we thank the state parties for their constructive engagement and the flexibility shown in the informal and bilateral consultations that took place. On the progress of the work, as I said, I just referred to the report which we have circulated. To give a little bit more substance or a reminder, in the last year we have continued work and concluded work on recommendations such as Recommendation 105 on tenure, Recommendation 169 on external political measures against the court, and the President referred to that. We had roundtables on workplace culture, gender equality and geographical representation, and the details of these meetings are contained in the report. On the future, now that most of the recommendations have been assessed, and some are already being implemented. The Assembly and also the review mechanism has to pay greater attention on the implementation of the recommendations that have been positively assessed for the reasons I described before. We think that the review mechanism will continue its work as platform for discussion on the last remaining recommendations that have to be assessed, and we will continue to submit progress reports. We also intend to monitor the overall progress of the review progress, both in terms of assessment and on implementation where appropriate, including, of course, as I said, the implementation. And we will continue and perhaps even increase the number of roundtables on implementation of possibly assessed recommendations. That seems logical to us because we have assessed more and more recommendations, as I said, so we have to shift the focus to implementation. On this future, let me just say that we're also very interested to hear from you today or in the coming weeks how you see the future of the review mechanism. And just for those who weren't there when we were established at that time, it was very clear that this should not be an eternal body, but eternity, so even temporary can last a few years. But we are very interested in your views on what the future of the mechanism should be. I think I stop there, Madam Chair, and give the floor back to you. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much for your very clear and, as usual, concise presentations. And now I'll give I invite the court to make some remarks.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Chair. So, having discussed with my co-focal points, Juan from the registry and Racine from OTP, we decided to give you a very brief description of how we have seen things from the angle of the court. In terms of the process, as you all know, there have been two sets of discussions, one before each of the judicial recesses of the court, one up to July and the other one up to now, the ASP, where we have presented the work of the court to the review mechanism itself, but also the relevant facilitations. And that's the process, the way we've worked. It's been, we believe, a very good interaction with the states parties through the facilitations and obviously the review mechanism. On substance, we've seen things in the following way. On the recommendations, there is one set which is really the court-wide ones, where the three of us have been interacting, and I should say, if I may, that the interaction between the three organs have been the manifestation, a successful manifestation of the one court principle. It's been extremely constructive with my colleagues and therefore the other organs of the three principal organs. We've had, of course, in that process also the trust fund for victims in the discussions. And there were also the organ-specific, of course, recommendations that each of us presented. So did the Trust Fund for Victims. On the status update, as you said, Madam President, and the co-chairs, we haven't done a statistical analysis, but we believe that anywhere between 80 to 90% of the recommendations appear to have been in the initial assessment appears to have been done. Again, and this applies to both the court-wide ones and the organ-specific ones. On the implementation, again, as you said, Madam Chair, but I would like to actually re-emphasize and recall what you've said. Many of them have already been implemented. There was an almost automatic implementation that came with these initial assessments. Others are being implemented, and many others will need to be implemented, and obviously this is going to be done in complete synergy and transparency with the relevant bodies next year. Finally, I wanted also, on behalf of my colleagues and myself, thank the ambassadors, Van den Eyssel and Kanu, for their patience with us, having shown the patience. Also the country focal points, Bangladesh, Chile, and Poland, for having always listened to us. And the facilitations, all the various facilitations with which we had to discuss sometimes daily, right up to the meeting, to be sure that we were all on the same page. And last but not least, Gail and Aaron from the Secretariat, who were always available to help in the last minute. And with that, I'll conclude. I keep it short and happy later for each of us to take questions. Thank you.
I thank you very much for these remarks. And now I will leave this plenary session in the competent hands of the co-chairpersons of the review mechanism. So I hand it over to you, ambassadors, and I wish you a very productive and interesting discussion. I thank you.
Thank you again, Madam President, for your commitment to the review process, but also your overall leadership of the Assembly of State Parties. Distinguished representatives, we've had the views and remarks of the Assembly of State Parties President and the Court, as well as our remarks. As informed or said by Ambassador van der Eysel, we're really here to hear from you and other participants. We do have a list of speakers. The plan is to go according to the list of speakers in the first part, and then we'll open it up for the interactive dialogue, in which all you need to do is to just press your speaker's button to indicate that you want to take the floor. We'll have the list, and we'll invite you to take the floor once we conclude with the speakers list. Given that we have limited time, we'll go directly to the speakers list. And we do have two delegations that will deliver in group statement. And so I would like to call on the distinguished representative of Côte d'Ivoire, who will deliver a statement on behalf of the African state parties. Côte d'Ivoire, you have the floor. I'm trying to have a good view of the room to be sure that... Okay. Please just press the button with the speaker icon, and then...
C'est bien appuyé. Merci. Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des États partis au mécanisme d'examen, j'ai l'honneur de prononcer cette déclaration au nom des États africains partis au statut de Rome de la Cour pénale internationale. Les États africains partis au statut de Rome se félicitent de cette session plénière sur le mécanisme d'examen en tant que plateforme de discussion sur le processus d'examen, sur le travail et l'avenir du mécanisme d'examen, ainsi que sur les recommandations issues de l'examen des experts indépendants. Nous saisissons cette occasion pour féliciter le mécanisme d'examen de s'être acquitté de son mandat avec transparence et inclusion. Nous remercions le mécanisme d'examen pour les avancées notables accomplies jusqu'ici. Outre la catégorisation des recommandations d'experts indépendants, le rapport sur les progrès globaux et le plan d'action complet réalisé lors de la dernière session, nous notons l'achèvement de l'évaluation de la plupart des recommandations de l'examen des experts indépendants. Nous saisissons cette occasion pour exprimer notre satisfaction à l'égard du Bureau pour avoir adopté la proposition sur la mise en œuvre de la recommandation 169 de l'examen des experts indépendants sur la stratégie de réponse aux attaques contre la Cour par des États non partis. Il s'agit là d'un autre résultat concret de l'action du processus d'examen. Les États partis africains prennent également note, avec satisfaction, du rapport du mécanisme d'examen et de la matrice qui prennent en compte et reflètent les consultations menées avec les États partis, la Cour et toutes les parties prenantes. Nous apprécions que le rapport du mécanisme ait inclus les réflexions des débats lors des tables rondes sur la culture du travail, l'équilibre entre les genres, la représentation géographique équitable dans le recrutement du personnel de la Cour. Ces questions demeurent hautement prioritaires pour les États partis africains. Invités par le mécanisme d'examen à envisager les options pour la voie à suivre pour le processus d'examen, les parties africaines soutiennent l'appel en faveur de mandats spécifiques de l'Assemblée ou d'une facilitation pour les questions telles que la culture sur le lieu de travail et les victimes. Rappelant que le mécanisme d'examen n'a pas été créé à titre permanent et compte tenu de l'intention initiale de ne pas créer de nouveaux organes dans le processus d'examen, les États parties africains prennent note de la nécessité de continuer à surveiller la mise en œuvre des recommandations positivement évaluées et les aspects pratiques de celles qui n'ont pas encore été, y compris les questions relatives au secrétariat de l'Assemblée des États parties. Les États parties africains continuent d'attacher une grande importance aux travaux du mécanisme d'examen de la CPI et du système du statut de Rome. À cet égard, nous réaffirmons notre attachement au processus d'examen pour le renforcement de la Cour et de son efficacité, par le biais, entre autres, de la bonne gouvernance, du principe de complémentarité, de la coopération et de la promotion d'une représentation géographique équitable et de l'équilibre entre les genres. Par conséquent, nous appuyons l'examen de la CPI et du système du statut de Rome, ainsi que le travail du mécanisme d'examen, et nous restons pleinement engagés dans cet important processus d'examen. À cet égard, les États parties africains réitèrent la décision des chefs d'État et de gouvernement de l'Union africaine sur la CPI, appelant à s'engager dans le processus d'examen et à traiter la question de la politisation de la Cour. Pour conclure, les États parties africains restent convaincus, dans leur espoir, que nos efforts collectifs dans le cadre de l'examen de la CPI et du système du statut de Rome, ainsi que le travail du mécanisme d'examen, contribueront à renforcer la Cour et le système du statut de Rome dans leur efficacité, leur légitimité et leur capacité à rendre une justice efficace et à mettre fin à l'impunité pour les crimes les plus graves. Je vous remercie.
I thank the distinguished representative of Côte d'Ivoire, who spoke on behalf of the African state parties. And I now have the honor of giving the floor to the distinguished representative of Norway, who will speak on behalf of the Nordic countries. You have the floor.
I have the honor of speaking on behalf of the Nordic states parties, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Sweden, and my own country, Norway. The ongoing review process is of paramount importance for a strong, effective, and independent court. We consider the review crucial for the future of the court, and we wholeheartedly stand behind the process. We are grateful to all the stakeholders for tirelessly working towards improving the court and the Rome Statute systems throughout this process. We commend the court's efforts in the review, including through updates on the status of internal assessments. And we thank civil society for playing an important role, pointing to challenges and solutions we as state parties might not see. Now it is time to increase our focus on implementation. Genuine follow-up with a focus on results is vital to ensure that the immense efforts that have already been dedicated to the process will bear fruit. Going forward, we will continue to give priority to improving the governance of the court. We welcome the ongoing dialogue between states parties and the court towards enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of the court. A prerequisite for achieving better governance is a healthy workplace environment. The independent experts' findings on the workplace culture at the court were deeply concerning, and the recent report of the IOM on workplace culture in the judiciary backs up the experts' findings. We are troubled by the findings of a culture of fear and distrust, sexual harassment and bullying behavior throughout the court. A healthy workplace culture is essential to maintain productivity and staff well-being, ensure efficient operations, and enhance the reputation of an organization. This is, of course, important in any workplace, but an international court charged with upholding justice for victims must be held to the very highest standard. The latest report of the review mechanism documents substantial efforts that have been invested into improving the workplace culture. We are encouraged by the establishment of a set of core values for the court as a whole, and we welcome the recruitment of an ombudsperson. We regard positively steps towards gender equality, including the work of the Focal Point for Gender Equality towards countering sexism and unconscious bias. We warmly welcome the ICC strategy on gender equality and workplace culture, which will be launched later this week. And we will follow with interest the new staff selection policy to improve geographical representation and gender balance at the court. At the Office of the Prosecutor, we are encouraged by Prosecutor Khan's commitment to zero tolerance for all forms of misconduct. It is important that this policy is enforced wisely, bearing in mind the best interest of the court and of its staff as a whole. All staff should have recourse to a well-functioning resolution mechanism in which they have confidence. Overall, we urge the court to meaningfully engage its staff in the process to improve the workplace culture. We believe that active participation by the staff in the implementation of recommendations which affect them, including through the Staff Union Council, is key to sustainable results. Now that we are moving into a new phase, we have an opportunity to ensure the harmonious, efficient, and effective governance of the ICC. This must be done through our joint endeavors. In closing, we reiterate our gratitude to the review mechanism and express our full support for its guidance going into the implementation phase. We bear in mind the common objective of this process to ensure that the ICC and the Rome Statute system are optimized to deliver on their core mandate of fighting impunity and delivering justice to the victims of the worst crimes imaginable. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Norway who spoke on behalf of the Nordic countries. And that's the group statement that we have. We'll now go to individual delegations. Let me just use this opportunity to remind speakers of the time limit of 3 minutes, so we'll be able to conclude the speakers list and then get to the interactive dialogue in good time. I do have the honor to call on the distinguished representative of Mexico. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. En primer lugar, México desea reconocer su gran labor y liderazgo, así como la del embajador Paul van den Eysel, en la continuación del proceso de evaluación e implementación de las recomendaciones contenidas en el informe del Grupo de Expertos Independientes este año. También deseamos expresar nuestro agradecimiento a los propios expertos que nos acompañaron y asistieron este año a lo largo de las reuniones del mecanismo de revisión para intercambiar puntos de vista sobre sus recomendaciones y entender mejor los motivos que los llevaron a emitirlas. Durante el año 2022 se registraron importantes avances en línea con el Plan de Acción Integral, salvaguardando siempre la independencia judicial y del fiscal. A través de 10 reuniones del mecanismo de revisión y la realización de 2 mesas redondas, se logró la evaluación de recomendaciones clave para el mejoramiento de la Corte sobre temas como la cultura laboral, la adopción de un sistema de mandato, el fondo fiduciario para el beneficio de las víctimas, la participación de las víctimas en los procesos de la Corte, las reparaciones y asistencia a las mismas, la visión estratégica de la Corte para los próximos 10 años y la relación con la sociedad civil, entre las más importantes. Además, conocimos los avances realizados por todos los órganos de la Corte Penal Internacional para implementar o comenzar a implementar un gran número de recomendaciones de los expertos. En ese sentido, mi país desea reconocer a la Corte por su compromiso y trabajo realizado en este tema, a pesar de la excepcional carga de trabajo que actualmente experimenta el Alto Tribunal. Señor presidente, señor copresidente y coordinadores, tengan la certeza que México continuará en el año 2023 participando activamente en la evaluación de las recomendaciones restantes de conformidad con el Plan de Acción Integral. Reiteramos nuestro compromiso para continuar trabajando a fin de mejorar y fortalecer el desempeño, efectividad y eficiencia de la Corte mediante un proceso inclusivo y transparente. Nuevamente, gracias por su liderazgo, embajadores Cano y van den Eysel.
I thank the Ambassador of Mexico for his statement, and I have the honor to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Australia. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, Honourable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. 3 years have passed since this Assembly launched, by consensus, a state-driven process to review the International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute system. Australia is committed to strengthening and supporting the court. That is why we remain focused on the implementation of the court's reform priorities, to ensure that the court is optimally placed to deliver its important mandate now and into the future. We commend the review mechanism on its leadership and on the progress made over the course of the year. We are pleased that many of the independent expert review recommendations have now been positively assessed and are progressing through to implementation. We also commend the court's continued constructive engagement in the review process. But there is still much work to be done. Current resource and workload pressures underscore the urgency of reforms to make the court more efficient and more effective. The coming year presents us with an opportunity to redouble our efforts and to progress the implementation of these recommendations with renewed vigour and pragmatism. A key priority for Australia is strengthening the alignment of the court's resources and strategic direction with its core mandate as a court of last resort. We look forward to the Office of the Prosecutor releasing its report on complementarity. As co-focal points on the complementarity with Uganda, Australia welcomes the continued engagement of the court, states parties and civil society on this topic. We look forward to continuing our discussions on complementarity-related recommendations in 2023. Australia also considers reforms to the court's workplace culture, gender and geographic representation, as well as its arrears policy, as key priorities. We thank the court for its efforts and the progress made to date to improve the court's workplace culture, among other priorities. As we know, achieving cultural change does not happen overnight, and entrenching it is an ongoing endeavour. We must continue to work towards this objective and evaluate the effectiveness of steps taken. This is crucial to ensuring the court's operational effectiveness. Whilst we focus on implementing these reforms for the court of today, we must also have an eye to the court of the future. We thank the review mechanism for facilitating consideration this year of the development of a 10-year strategic vision for the court. Australia continues to support the development of this vision as a crucial investment in the future of the court. A strategic, pragmatic and principled vision is crucial to navigating the new challenges the future will bring. Any discussion must be underpinned by significant progress made by the court and the Assembly in implementing reform. Chair, as a long-standing supporter of the court, Australia remains committed to working in partnership with the court and states parties in 2023 to promote reform, to strengthen and support the court in delivering accountability now and into the future. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Australia, and I have the honor to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Ambassador Kanu and Ambassador Vanden Eysel, for facilitating today's meeting, as well as the discussion at the Hague Working Group this year. I would like to briefly make two concrete points that Japan believes are particularly important in relation to the review mechanism and for the future of the ICC. The first is the introduction of a tenure policy applicable to some ICC officials. In order to vitalize the organization, it is necessary to adopt a tenure system. And as you reported on the first day of the ASP meeting this week, state parties positively assessed the relevant IER recommendation at the meeting in June. That is to say, state parties agreed to introduce a tenure policy. From this point forward, it is important to proceed with substantive and constructive discussions on the design of a tenure system, such as duration of the term and the permissibility of exceptions, and to introduce a system at the earliest possible time. It is therefore very opportune for the ASP to adapt a draft resolution before us at this session. Given the importance of this subject, Japan would like to request you to allocate sufficient time for discussion on the design of the new tenure system next year. The second is improvement of the work environment. The IOM evaluation report on the workplace culture in the judiciary contains informative findings, some of which were shocking, to be frank. There must be no bullying or harassment or abuse of authorities at the ICC, which is an institution dedicated to achieving justice. Such behavior would instantly extinguish the international community's expectations of the ICC. And it is a disservice to the efforts of many staff members who are diligently and seriously engaged in their duties. Japan highly appreciates President Hofmansky's leadership and the active involvement of many judges and staff members in producing the IOM report. We also commend the revision of the Code of Judicial Ethics in October as a positive step forward. At the same time, we are of the view that preparation of the report and revision of the code are not ends in themselves. It is imperative to improve the work environment on a factual basis. We should continue to pay particular attention to this matter in the review of the ICC, and would like us to ask the state party representatives and focal points to keep this in mind when considering the work program for the coming year. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Japan. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Ambassador, for giving me the floor. The United Kingdom strongly supported the commissioning of the independent export review process in 2019, recognising, I think, amongst other states, that the need for the court to improve its performance in a number of areas to meet the demands of international justice and deliver its mandate. The review mechanism has performed an excellent service in assessing and prioritising the recommendations, and we look forward to the completions of those remaining. It is important the states parties are assured in the round that the recommendations are being implemented. The facilitations will prove a valuable role in assessing and implementing the recommendations. However, the UK still sees the value of a single body that can report to the Bureau and states parties on the overall picture. We do not see this body as being permanent, but rather as a continuing body until states are satisfied that the recommendations are implemented or are in the process of implementation. We therefore welcome the roadmap outlined by the review mechanism chair, which will see the mechanism continue to monitor the overall process, including implementation. We support the extension of the review mechanism's mandate for a further period of 12 months. We reiterate that the implementation of the recommendations is a shared endeavour and that states parties are crucial to the effective implementation, as well as the court itself. It is also interesting to note and important to note the work on the draft strategic plans for 2023 to 2025. And we note the registry's draft includes implementations of the IER's recommendations as a priority, with a detailed process with a timetable and decision-making governance required for actual implementation. The UK fully supports this approach, embedding it within the strategic plans across all organs of the court, and will certainly be submitting comments, I think, as other states would need to do by the end of January. Ambassador, the implementation of the IER recommendations remains a top priority of the United Kingdom, and we will continue to work collaboratively with states parties and the court as the review process continues. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom, and I have the honor of giving the floor to the distinguished representative of France. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Messieurs les représentants du mécanisme d'examen de la Cour, Messieurs les représentants de la Cour, distingués délégués, la France a été l'un des premiers États à soutenir l'idée d'un audit externe de la Cour pénale internationale en vue de renforcer son fonctionnement et d'identifier des solutions pour répondre aux défis externes comme internes auxquels elle est confrontée. La publication en septembre 2020 du rapport des experts indépendants nous a permis de dresser un bilan et de recevoir des recommandations pour un renforcement du fonctionnement de la Cour et du système du statut de Rome. La France a soutenu la mise en place par cette Assemblée d'un mécanisme d'examen visant à permettre des avancées concrètes, rapides et ambitieuses dans le respect de l'indépendance de la Cour. Nous nous félicitons que les discussions tenues en 2022 donnent des résultats. Les progrès intervenus dans l'évaluation et la mise en œuvre de certaines recommandations constituent un signal encourageant. À cet égard, la création d'un ombudsman au sein de la Cour, qui devrait prendre ses fonctions dans les prochaines semaines, représente une manifestation concrète du travail entrepris. Nous tenons à saluer ici l'engagement de l'ensemble des organes de la Cour dans le dialogue constructif avec les États parties sur l'ensemble des recommandations et les engagements qu'ils ont pris pour s'attaquer rapidement à ce qui nécessitait une réponse. La France considère que le temps de la mise en œuvre effective et complète des recommandations des experts indépendants est désormais venu. C'est notamment le cas de la recommandation 363 sur la tenure policier. L'Assemblée, qui est garante de la bonne administration et de la bonne gestion de la Cour, doit s'impliquer dans les directions qui seront prises pour la mise en œuvre des recommandations et dans le suivi de cette mise en œuvre. Il en va de la réussite de la Cour dans les prochaines années. C'est également une question de confiance entre la Cour et les États parties qui l'ont créée et qui la soutiennent. La France y prendra toute sa part. Monsieur le Président, la mise en œuvre des recommandations doit résulter d'un effort commun et de la coordination des organes de la Cour, des États parties et de la société civile. En cette année de 20e anniversaire de l'entrée en vigueur du statut de Rome, il nous revient collectivement de soutenir cette institution encore jeune et de contribuer à son renforcement. Vous pouvez compter sur l'engagement résolu de la France pour continuer le travail bien engagé cette année par les représentants du mécanisme et les points focaux que nous tenons à remercier vivement pour leur travail. Je vous remercie.
I thank the distinguished representative of France, and I have the honor to give the floor to our country focal point and the ambassador of Chile. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, embajador. Deseamos reconocer y valorar el liderazgo suyo y del embajador Van Aysel como representante de los Estados partes de este mecanismo. Saludamos también a mis colegas de Bangladesh y Polonia, que formamos parte de los denominados puntos focales. Como fue informado, este año ha sido de intensas y fructíferas consultas con los Estados partes, la sociedad civil, pero en particular con los representantes o puntos focales de los órganos de la Corte, quienes participaron activa y comprometidamente en este proceso. Desde nuestra óptica, nos gustaría resaltar algunos elementos. El mandato del mecanismo debería renovarse para realizar la evaluación de las recomendaciones restantes de los expertos independientes, como lo propone el proyecto de resolución. En segundo lugar, que la implementación de las recomendaciones evaluadas positivamente deberían estar bajo el alero permanente de las actuales facilitaciones. Así también, los esfuerzos para mejorar el desempeño de la Corte deben ser continuos y no cesar con la conclusión formal del mandato del mecanismo. Así también, la Corte y los Estados partes, en colaboración con la sociedad civil, deberían crear oportunidades para reflexionar sobre los avances logrados hasta ahora en el proceso de revisión. Finalmente, señor presidente, deseamos reiterar nuestro compromiso y disposición para seguir formando parte como uno de los puntos focales del mecanismo de revisión en el próximo periodo. Muchas gracias.
I thank the Ambassador. Thank you for your statement and, of course, your engagement in the work of the review mechanism. And similarly, I have the honor of giving the floor to our country focal point, Poland. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Poland, as a member of the review mechanism at country focal point, has the privilege of being closely involved in the review process. As the assessment of the recommendations of the independent expert review is slowly being finalized and the implementation of the positively assessed recommendations continues, we may be tempted to make a preliminary summary of our joint achievements. There is no doubt that great progress has been made in the assessment of the IER recommendations by the Assembly mandate holders and the review mechanism itself. Any remaining recommendations should be assessed during the first half of 2023. We hope that we will be able to clear any backlogs in the assessment process by then. The focus has already shifted to the implementation of positively assessed recommendations, which is an ongoing commitment. It will ensure that the tangible outcome of the review process does not fade, but contributes to improving the efficiency of the Rome Statute system. The implementation should continue to be carried out in full respect of the judicial and prosecutorial independence. Distinguished delegates, I said earlier that we might be tempted to make a preliminary summary of the progress made, but we certainly should not be tempted yet to draw any final conclusions on the success or failure of the review exercise. We still have a lot of work ahead of us, but our important achievement is that we, all stakeholders, working together throughout the review process, dealing with nearly every aspect of the court's work, have already proved that the review process has become a joint undertaking that unites us despite differences and shows that we all have one goal: to support the ICC so that it can fulfill its mission of delivering justice for all victims of egregious atrocities. To conclude, Mr. Chairs, I would like to reaffirm Poland's readiness to continue our engagement in the review process as a member of the review mechanism. And on a more personal note, if I may, I would like to wholeheartedly thank the review mechanism state party representatives, Ambassador Paul van den Eyssel and Ambassador Michael Kano, for their hard work and excellent leadership this year. And I also thank my fellow at-country focal points, colleagues from Bangladesh and Chile, and of course the court focal points, Hirat, Juan and Racine. Thank you so much for fruitful and pleasant cooperation, as always. And last but not least, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the Secretariat for the support provided, to Gail and Aaron. Thank you so much. You know that without your personal dedication, it would not have been possible to fulfill all the tasks assigned to the review mechanism. Thank you so much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Poland. Thank you, dear Paulina, for your statements, kind words, but also your active engagement in the work of the review mechanism. And I have the honor of giving the floor to the Ambassador of Belgium. You have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Messieurs les ambassadeurs. Je peux peut-être commencer très simplement par faire écho à la fin de l'intervention de la déléguée de la Pologne, qui a fait des remerciements très complets et avec cet enthousiasme qui n'appartient qu'à Paulina et donc je voudrais m'y associer. La Belgique soutient le processus d'examen de la CPI et du statut de Rome qui est en cours. C'est un exercice utile et nous avons continué à y participer très activement pendant toute la période intersessionnelle. Je vais pour ma part faire plutôt quelques commentaires sur le processus, pas tellement sur la substance ou sur des recommandations particulières, parce que je ne pense pas nécessairement que ce soit le lieu de le faire, mais cela étant, je m'associe tout à fait à beaucoup des priorités qui ont été évoquées par tous les intervenants, et notamment par les deux interventions faites au nom du groupe africain d'une part et du groupe nordique, et évidemment tout ce qui touche notamment à la culture sur le lieu de travail, à la tolérance de zéro en ce qui concerne les abus de toutes sortes dès lors qu'ils sont établis, et les questions notamment d'égalité de genre. Dans le cadre du processus d'examen, la Belgique voudrait tout d'abord, encore une fois, saluer le travail important effectué par la Cour elle-même. L'engagement sérieux de tous les organes via les points focaux qui sont avec nous dans le processus d'examen a été illustré tout d'abord par la réponse globale de la Cour au rapport des experts indépendants, qui était un document très fouillé, qui date maintenant déjà d'il y a 1 an et demi, mais depuis lors et surtout par ses apports, que ce soit écrits ou oraux, toujours de très grande qualité dans l'examen des recommandations des experts, qui s'est déroulé au sein du mécanisme et des différentes facilitations. Nombre de recommandations catégorisées comme relevant de la Cour sont déjà en cours de mise en œuvre. Certains l'étaient d'ailleurs déjà avant même le rapport des experts, comme ça a pu être relevé dans certaines de nos conversations, y compris celles avec les experts lorsqu'ils sont venus échanger avec nous dans certaines réunions du mécanisme d'examen en particulier, mais aussi, je crois, dans l'une ou l'autre facilitation. Je salue évidemment le travail rigoureux d'organisation et de coordination des travaux réalisés par le mécanisme d'examen, ça a déjà été dit, et donc j'y reviendrai tout à la fin quand je toucherai la question de l'avenir du mécanisme. Comme on l'a déjà relevé, en tout cas pour ce qui est de ma délégation, le travail auquel les États partis se sont eux-mêmes astreints a été considérable. Je me souviens, Paul, que tu avais décrit une self-inflicted pain on the part of states parties, et c'est assez vrai. Et c'est dû évidemment à la manière dont les experts ont conçu leur rapport et au nombre de leurs recommandations. Et donc le travail intersessionnel dans les différents groupes de travail a été intense, et il a montré qu'il est parfois difficile pour les États partis, et même, je crois, pour les grandes délégations, de suivre l'ensemble des travaux. Donc ça, c'est quand même un enjeu aussi de ce processus. Nous devons y rester attentifs. Il m'est arrivé plus d'une fois de participer à certaines des réunions et de voir que certaines recommandations étaient adoptées sans nécessairement une discussion approfondie et sans qu'on soit très sûr si tout le monde avait véritablement eu l'occasion de prendre des instructions. Et donc ça me renvoie un peu à toute cette notion de state-driven process, qui était une discussion qui nous avait un peu occupés quand on a négocié les documents. Et pour la Belgique, state-driven process, nous n'étions pas tout à fait favorables à cette expression. Enfin, de manière ultime, tout est state-driven, mais nous sommes très sensibles à la question de la catégorisation, et donc nous n'entendons pas state-driven process comme signifiant que les États doivent mettre leur nez partout, parce que nous pensons aussi que cet exercice ne doit pas se transformer en exercice de microgestion. Je crois que nous sommes arrivés à trouver un bon équilibre. C'est une petite crainte que nous avions un petit peu après l'exercice de catégorisation, parce que pour nous, l'exercice de catégorisation signifiait bien que ce qui était attribué à la Cour était attribué à la Cour, et souvent pour une bonne raison, c'est que ça touchait fondamentalement, il s'agissait souvent des recommandations qui touchaient le plus fondamentalement à l'indépendance de la Cour et du procureur. Mais pour nous, straight-driven signifie bien que ce qui est alloué aux États doit être décidé par les États. La mise en œuvre d'une recommandation ne peut jamais être présumée. Les experts ont fait un bon travail, dont nous leur sommes reconnaissants, mais in fine, c'est nous qui devons décider en ce qui concerne les recommandations adressées aux États parties. Toutes les recommandations ne sont pas bonnes, beaucoup sont excellentes, pas toutes, certaines étaient moins bien inspirées, et quoi qu'il en soit, il s'agit pour les États membres de décider ce qu'ils veulent en faire. Et pour ça, il faut évidemment que nous maîtrisions ce processus. Je pense que le mécanisme a joué un rôle fondamental dans ce sens, par ce mélange de rigueur et de pragmatisme avec lequel vous avez conduit le processus, l'importance également des principes d'inclusion et de transparence qui étaient fondamentaux et que vous avez toujours veillé à faire respecter. Et ceci m'amène un peu, pour terminer, à la question que vous avez posée sur l'avenir. C'est une réflexion ici qui est préliminaire, mais je comprends qu'elle commence. Pour le moment, l'idée est de renouveler votre mandat pour 1 an dans l'état de la résolution qui nous est proposée. Nous sommes d'accord pour dire qu'il n'a jamais été question que le mécanisme fût éternel, mais cela étant, il faudrait selon nous quand même qu'il y ait encore un mécanisme, un minimum centralisé pour assurer le suivi des travaux, même quand nous serons dans une phase de mise en œuvre pure, c'est-à-dire la phase post-assessment, lorsque nous serons dans la phase de mise en œuvre des recommandations qui auront été évaluées positivement ou positivement avec modification. Et donc, nous ne sommes pas a priori en faveur pour que ce travail de suivi, de coordination du processus se retrouve entre les mains du bureau. Nous pensons que le mécanisme fait très bien l'affaire et donc on peut tout à fait discuter en temps voulu de voir s'il faut continuer à lui donner le même nom, si le mécanisme peut être un tout petit peu simplifié et allégé. Nous sommes tout à fait flexibles. Mais enfin, mon message, c'est que nous vous aimons bien et nous aimerions que vous ou vos successeurs continuiez à faire ce travail important. Merci.
I thank the Ambassador of Belgium for his statement, and we thank you for the love. I have the honor to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bangladesh, another ad country focal point. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am delivering the statement on behalf of our ambassador. Bangladesh appreciates the work of the review mechanism and applauds the co-facilitators, Ambassador Van der Eijzel and Ambassador Michael Kanu, for steering the mechanism's work throughout in a judicious and transparent manner. It's also good to see the ways you, Madam Mr. President, the court focal points, the assembly mandate holders, and the civil society engaged throughout in open and constructive manner. As an at-country focal point, Bangladesh engaged both in The Hague and in New York, leading to the adoption of the comprehensive work plan, and notes the progress made in the plan's implementation. We believe the matrix prepared by the review mechanism, stating the status and outcome of the assessments of the IEA recommendations, constitute important reference point for member states and all principals in evaluating the progress in the court's review process. While assessment of some recommendation will continue until the middle of 2023, as per the Comprehensive Action Plan, it will be useful to soon engage on implementation of the recommendations that have been positively assessed. We are open to suggestions from all stakeholders, including civil society, on how best to follow up the positively assessed recommendations. While assessment of the sum of the recommendations will continue as per the SEP, let us discuss how we pronounce on the negatively assessed recommendations. We also need to decide on the future of the mechanism beyond 2023. Besides advancing on the Comprehensive Action Plan implementation, Bangladesh sees utility in the mechanism to continue in a modicum of follow-up role on the recommendations that are already under implementation or would proceed for implementation. It would also be important to designate an entity to oversee the matters of the IEA recommendations in entirety. The Assembly may reflect on possible actions. I flag this being mindful of the mandate to the review mechanism given by all states parties, aiming to meaningfully augmenting the efficacy of the code, ensuring best use of the limited resources, and also giving universalizing of the code. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Bangladesh, who was the last state party's speaker on the list. I'll now move on to the Staff Union Council and then proceed to civil society. I have the honor to give the floor to the President of the Staff Union Council. You have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur Canu. Le syndicat du personnel de la CPI vous remercie de nous donner la parole. Le syndicat souhaitait profiter de cette opportunité pour reconnaître les efforts qui ont été faits par la Cour durant cette année. Le syndicat a été impliqué dans nombreuses activités menées par la Cour et nous l'en remercions. Si pour nous cela représente les premières pierres à l'édifice, nous sommes bien conscients que le chemin vers un lieu de travail sain et positif reste encore long. Le syndicat souhaite rester critique et constructif. Il relève donc de notre mandat de continuer à attirer l'attention sur ce qui doit être amélioré. Alors, pourquoi parlons-nous encore d'un long chemin à parcourir? Tout simplement parce que le syndicat continue à recevoir et à discuter avec des membres du personnel qui ne voient pas encore les conséquences positives des actions prises par la Cour. Nous continuons à assister des membres du personnel qui souffrent de surmenage et d'épuisement, qui ont peur pour leur sécurité, qui subissent un management inapproprié et qui ne se sentent pas entendus par le haut management. Certains décident de quitter la Cour, alors que beaucoup décident de rester. En effet, malgré la désillusion, ils continuent de croire au mandat de notre organisation. C'est pour tous ces employés que le syndicat souhaite encourager nos leaders à prendre des actions concrètes et visibles pour regagner la confiance du personnel et faire en sorte que le changement de notre culture de travail ne reste pas un concept vain, mais bien une réalité. Concernant le rôle du mécanisme d'examen, le syndicat reconnaît que c'est grâce à lui que nous avons pu avoir une voix durant les débats portant sur la mise en œuvre des recommandations tombant sous notre mandat. Pour nous, ce mécanisme a fait toute la différence et nous souhaiterions qu'il continue de veiller sur le suivi des progrès de mise en œuvre des recommandations des experts. Nous vous remercions pour votre écoute. Merci.
I thank the President of the Staff Union Council for a statement, but also indeed for the engagement of the Staff Union Council in the work of the review mechanism. I now move on to civil society, and I have the honor of inviting the representative of Human Rights Watch. You have the floor, please. I hope you have a microphone and you can just press the button.
There's somewhere there in the back. I don't see it.
You do have the floor, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you for giving us the opportunity. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Coalition for the ICC review team, which was established in an effort to coordinate civil society's effort around the complex and overwhelming IR process. We welcome the organization of this dedicated plenary session on the review process, allowing for greater engagement with all stakeholders, including civil society. Civil society, through the review team, has actively engaged with the mechanism throughout 2022, and we welcome the opportunity to do so today. As the assessment of AR recommendations draw to a close, And as we look towards the implementation of the positively assessed recommendations by the court and this assembly, we would like to recall the central objective of the review process, which is to enhance the capacity of the ICC and its ability to more effectively serve the communities affected by its work. Looking ahead to the future of the process, we would like to share the following recommendations. The first is the implementation of the positively assessed recommendations should be ongoing to ensure progress continues to be made and that the assessment process is not simply a box-ticking exercise, but a genuine step towards improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the court. Secondly, Mr. Ambassador, the efforts to improve the court's performance should also be ongoing and not simply end with the conclusion of the mechanism's mandate. This includes ensuring that progress achieved in this process is not lost, and on the contrary, that the court, state parties, and other stakeholders continue to build on that progress. The court and the state parties, in collaboration with civil society, should create opportunities to reflect on the progress achieved in the review process thus far, including by assessing whether the key objectives of the strengthening the court's delivery of justice has been achieved and identify potential gaps that remain. Further, we welcome the review mechanism's continued emphasis on ensuring the review process is led by the following fundamental principles and recommend that they continue beyond the mandate of the mechanism. First is transparency, which contributes to a legitimate and credible process, including by the regular and consistent communication about progress and next steps in different languages, and ensuring that the inclusive access of all stakeholders to meetings. Second, and related to the above, is inclusive and meaningful engagement with stakeholders. Civil society has been an essential stakeholder in the review process since its conception, a practice which must continue. Thirdly and finally is respect for the court's judicial and prosecutorial independence and the consciousness of the limited resources. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
I thank the representative of the Coalition for the International Criminal Court. There was an inscription for Human Rights Watch.
Many thanks for the opportunity to address the plenary on behalf of Human Rights Watch. As the assessment phase of the independent expert review seemingly nears completion, this is an opportune time to discuss the implementation phase and the future of the review process. We welcome states parties' intention to renew the review mechanism's mandate to finish any outstanding assessments of recommendations. As part of its work next year, and as indicated in its report, we encourage the mechanism to provide guidance on the best way forward for what will be an ongoing implementation phase. In our view, this implementation phase should be guided by the following principles, in addition to the ones already highlighted by the Coalition for the ICC. First, efforts to improve the court's performance should remain part of the court's regular work. There should also be a shared commitment to continue the process of reflection, including a focus on ASP-directed recommendations and the responsibilities of states parties in providing financial, political, and practical support. Second, in deciding on the means of reporting, there is a need to balance accountability with the court's independence, including by not overburdening it. This could be achieved through a calendar of quarterly intersessional reporting to the Assembly and a standing review agenda item at each annual session. Third, to avoid bureaucratization and instead ensure that the process is manageable, reporting on implementation should be streamlined around clusters of recommendation and also include a more holistic approach to topics. Fourth, there are a number of recommendations which were positively assessed and have budgetary implications. Their implementation should not be hindered by the lack of adequate resources. Fifth, the review mechanism could also consider whether there should be a process by which to revisit assessments. And finally, and importantly, we hope you can ensure the continuation of good practices that have allowed genuine participation of civil society. In conclusion, we hope you can commit to actively engaging in next year's discussions in a view of achieving concrete outcomes in full respect of the court's independence. We look forward to continuing to work with you and the court in our collective effort to strengthen the court's delivery of justice. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Human Rights Watch for her statement. This exhausts the list of speakers, but I would like to give perhaps delegations, civil society, other stakeholders the opportunity to say something, to respond to something said, add to something which is said. This is your opportunity. I don't see, but help me because my eyesight is not so good and the hall is big. If I don't see anyone, I think before we conclude, I would like to invite the court to perhaps say a few words based on the things we heard from state parties and other stakeholders. Gerard or Racine or Juan, I don't know who would.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm not sure we would. I can't speak to Racine from at this distance, but I think we don't have anything to add but to say that we remain committed to working with the review mechanism or whatever entity is going to be in charge of this and the facilitations, as we have done throughout the last 18 months or almost 2 years. And we've heard also what the Staff Union Council's president said, and we will continue. We will discuss and continue the discussion on everything that was said separately, of course, at the court. Some of the things that were said were alarming, so it would be very important for us to follow up. We have our monthly meetings, but we would propose that we double that and see what we can do. And we also heard what civil society said. Everything has been noted. We have been taking notes, and naturally, what also states parties said. And that's all that I have to say. We remain committed to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerard. I am informed that the ambassador of Belgium would like to say something. Please, you have the floor.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je suis désolé de reprendre la parole, mais puisque vous nous avez invités à réagir aux interventions, je voulais brièvement le faire, d'abord pour remercier tous les intervenants et pour relever que, réagir aux deux interventions de la société civile. Je pense vraiment que sur ce sujet, comme sur tous les sujets d'ailleurs, mais les contributions et l'inclusion de la société civile sont capitales et nous apportent une très grande valeur ajoutée. Comme je n'ai pas eu l'occasion de participer au récent dialogue entre les États parties et la société civile, je voulais profiter de l'occasion pour le dire. Mais alors aussi pour réagir à un commentaire plus spécifique qui est sur les implications budgétaires. Je crois que c'est un point, ça doit rester un point d'attention. C'est peut-être j'allais dire une faiblesse, enfin en tout cas c'est une particularité du rapport, c'est que le rapport n'est pas des experts indépendants, il n'est pas précis ni sur la question des implications en termes de modifications statutaires, ni sur la question de l'impact budgétaire. Et il y avait un peu cette idée générale dans la présentation du rapport que dans l'ensemble, ça n'impliquerait, la plupart des recommandations n'impliquaient pas de modification du statut, ce qui n'est pas exact. Mais surtout, elles ne sont pas identifiées comme telles dans le rapport. Et c'est encore plus vrai pour la question des implications budgétaires. Donc je crois que c'est quelque chose qui devra vraiment faire partie de notre cadre d'analyse pour la suite des travaux. Je vous remercie.
I thank the Ambassador of Belgium. Dear colleagues, we still have 10 minutes. I'm still looking around the room whether there's someone who wants to say. If not, I will start concluding. I will start concluding. Conclude with housekeeping is that we have arranged for an informal consultation on the draft resolution. I heard a lot of support today. I hope to hear the same tomorrow. That will take place tomorrow at 10 a.m. till 10:45 in room Europe 1-2 I don't know whether there are two separate rooms, but I don't think so. So in room Europe, and we hope to conclude by the resolution. Second remark is we invited you to share your preliminary views or non-preliminary views on the future. We listened with great attention. Many of you said something how they would see the future. We will not draw a conclusion now. What we intend is that we will next year somewhere reach out to you with our ideas on how the future will look like, and we can have perhaps a separate discussion on that. And of course, in the end, the future of the review mechanism is in your hands. So we can just bring into ideas, but you have to decide. Second observation, I heard a lot of people speaking about the good cooperation. And I subscribe to that. Those who have been at the ICC as state party representatives in different roles and have a little bit of history like myself know that when we started this process, that was not a given, I think. Tensions were running high sometimes. And I often had the idea that this exercise could turn out in a we against them exercise. And I think it has not happened. At least that's what I hear and that's what I myself experience. And I think that's a very positive development because I think we have to do it together. And many of you have stressed the need for continuing this cooperative effort. And that is what the review mechanism intends to do. On that note, I think we can conclude our session. I thank you all for your input, for your statements, for your words of thanks, for your comments, for your advice. We will take them to heart. And before we leave the room, I think the Secretariat wants to make an announcement. Please, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Ambassador. There will be a meeting of the African group tomorrow morning at 9:30 to 10:30 in this room, the Willem Alexander Hall. Thank you.
On that note, I think there will be another meeting here, but on the omnibus resolution, but not. So this meeting, I thank you once again, and this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.